José Luiz, novamente, por favor, o som.
Yes, sorry. Apologies. So again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us from around the world. Welcome to day 5, the final day of Collections 2030 and beyond, activating heritage collections for sustainable development. It has been a privilege to accompany you through this rich and inspiring journey. Over the past week, we have explored how heritage collections and collections-based organizations can contribute to the people, planet, prosperity, and peace pillars of sustainable development. Together, we have shared ideas, sparked new connections, and shaped a collective vision for how collections can support sustainable development in transformative ways. Today, we turn to the 5th and final pillar of sustainable development, collections and partnership. The partnership pillar calls for mobilizing the means to implement the 2030 agenda through a revitalized global partnership for sustainable development, which is grounded in strengthened global solidarity, focus on the needs of the poorest and most vulnerable, and inclusive of all countries, all stakeholders, and all people. Throughout the day, we explore how to build and sustain meaningful collaborations across societal actors and how the contributions of diverse stakeholders across governments, UN processes, local communities, and beyond can be better communicated and leveraged. We'll also consider what innovative and high-impact partnerships collections-based organizations can establish within the heritage sector and across disciplines and sectors to further advance sustainable development in meaningful and lasting ways. As with the previous days, today's program will include a keynote to spark our thinking, lightning talks to inspire reflection, a forward-looking panel to connect ideas across sectors, and then breakout sessions where everyone's voices will help shape the conference recommendations. As a reminder, our visual communicator and storyteller continues to capture key moments and messages through real-life illustrations, which you'll be able to see on the conference website. We'll shortly share the link with you with the first 3 days of summary visuals for the conference. The speakers who will be joining us live for the Q&A session following the pre-recorded presentations. And we encourage you to post your questions and insights concerning the presentations in the Q&A panel as the talks are being played. And please, when submitting a question, don't forget to indicate to which speaker it's addressed to. The panel and the breakout discussions will also be held live, and they will offer valuable opportunities for real-time dialogue, collaboration, and co-creation. As usual, the messages from the organizers will appear in the chat, so you'll probably already be seeing some of them, but please note that attendees will not be able to post there. For enhanced accessibility, you can use Zoom's closed captions feature or follow the real-time translated captions available through the Wordly platform, for which instructions have been shared in advance, but they are also going to be posted here in the chat. And as a reminder, the recordings of the previous days are already available on the Apoio Online YouTube channel, and the link to that will be shared here in the chat, and shortly they will also be available on the ICRAM YouTube channel. So now let's turn to our keynote presentation, and let me introduce our speaker today. So today's keynote will be delivered by Gustav Wollens, who's a senior lecturer at Linnaeus University in Sweden, connected to the UNESCO Chair on Heritage Futures. You can find Gustav's full biography on the conference website as usual. Gustav, in his presentation, invites us to explore how futures thinking can reshape the way we manage heritage collections for sustainable development. By viewing heritage as a future-making practice, the presentation challenges us to consider how today's decisions shape tomorrow's possibilities. We'll hear how participatory foresight and cross-sectoral collaboration can unlock new approaches to stewardship, helping collections become active agents in building inclusive, intentional, and forward-looking futures. Please, if you have questions for Gustav, don't forget to put them in the Q&A panel. Let's watch the keynote presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gustav Ollens. I'm a senior lecturer at Linnaeus University with a specific focus on critical heritage studies. And I'm very happy to present here today on this exciting conference. So thank you very much for the invitation. I am today going to talk about the value in foresight when activating heritage collections, and I hope it can provide some new perspectives and ideas for you in relating heritage collections also to futures thinking. And I am affiliated to the UNESCO Chair on Heritage Futures. This, however, does not mean that I represent the views of UNESCO, but only of my own, which is important to underline here. So what is UNESCO Chair on Heritage Futures? It was established in 2017. The shareholder is Cornelius Holtorf, but he has a team surrounding him, and it provides tools for creative and critical futures thinking. So the three main questions that we are asking are: which futures are we preserving cultural heritage for? Which cultural heritage will help future generations solve important challenges? And how can we develop futures awareness and futures literacy among cultural heritage workers worldwide? Linking futures thinking with heritage is very much like an emerging topic of research within the field, and it's so most of the publications have been coming within the last 10-15 years or so. However, it is very much gaining momentum, and there's an increasing awareness that we need to think more about the future within the field of heritage. So it's very much a field that is gaining momentum, and this focus is also gaining momentum, so to speak. So what does futures literacy mean? Yes, it is a learned or otherwise acquired capacity to visualize a variety of possible futures that differ from the present. It is also to master theoretical and practical tools for acting in the present in relationship to these futures. So it is about the capacity to be able to visualize a variety of very different futures that are very different from the present, that differ from the present, and also relate these different futures to actions today. So also very much positioning these futures within present practices and present processes. And by so doing, it creates a more proactive relationship with the future and increases resilience. And it is a capacity that you can train at, you can get better at it, and you can get better at visualizing a multiplicity of different futures and relate them to actions in the present. And that's something that the UNESCO Chair that I'm affiliated to is working on through workshops and training resources and so on. And one of the ways in which you can train futures literacy is for using strategic foresight. And foresight is a systematic and structured way of engaging with the future based on a set of tools, skills, and approaches. And it's very much strategic foresight is very much an established. And there are a lot of resources available out there, open access, that you can use if you want to apply it within your own organization, for example. And they are often open access. For example, the UK government has a very good toolkit that we've been using. And if you are interested, a lot of these resources, or some of these resources, are also listed in the publication that you can see to the left here, where I was working with ICROM within a foresight exercise within the heritage sector, where we were applying the so-called horizon scanning, looking out over a 15-year horizon. But there's still much more to be done in terms of developing resources on strategic foresight that are tailored towards the needs within the heritage sector, the specific needs that the heritage sector is facing. Those resources are still necessary to do. And very importantly, foresight, or futures literacy for that matter, does not predict the future. That is sometimes a misconception. It creates options for the future. It has nothing to do with predictions. It is about our actions today, how it informs our actions today, how a multiplicity of different futures informs our actions today. We, together with ECROM and as part of a larger European project, we also did a review of existing foresight studies within the heritage sector and also within adjacent in adjacent fields to the heritage sector. We noticed that there is a lack of diversity in existing foresight approaches when the heritage sector is applying foresight, even though it is still quite uncommon to do it. When it is done, it is seldom looking beyond the heritage sector, and it is most often expert driven, and this is probably also affecting the novelty and diversity in imagined futures. So there is also very much a need of open, collaborative and co-creative approaches that engages a diversity of stakeholders, including those traditionally excluded from such processes. And here this very much relates to the theme of the conference of today. Here there is certainly a need to build cross-sectoral partnerships, also engaging and collaborating with partners outside of the heritage field, and starting these kind of futures forward thinking processes together, instead of keeping it only within the heritage sector, because this very much also relates to power. Imagining future is also often related to power in different ways. So for example, when an imagined future is being labeled as desirable, it is also always necessary to have this kind of critical perspective and take one step back and ask, by whom and for whom is this future created? Whose needs are being fulfilled by this particular future? Who belongs in this future and who does not belong in this future? What ways of life are made possible and what ways of life are being foreclosed, who are made futureless. So there's also often somehow a very kind of exclusionary mechanisms in the kind of future scenarios that we can be faced with, and we also need to be aware of these and reveal them, and strive towards more like open foresight processes that allows for a diversity of different perspectives, because a more like open and participatory and diverse foresight process also creates more diverse and inclusive futures in the end. So that is important. That is also why it is so important to kind of move beyond only the sector of heritage to include other voices, other perspectives, and build future awareness together in a very kind of inclusive and open process, which is also very much related to kind of striving towards a more sustainable future, not a less sustainable future, but a more sustainable future. I think an open process is needed for that, and an open, participatory, and inclusive process is needed for that. I will now focus on 3 future-oriented values when activating heritage collections. These are values that I think are good to think with, and that I have been facing in the different ways through my work with futures thinking and futures literacy, through like my work with ECROM, the strategic foresight work, through my work with the UNESCO Shared Heritage Futures, where we've been interviewing heritage professionals about the future in different ways, and through other projects that I've been engaged in. So these 3 points cannot be traced to a single project, but it's a body of ideas somehow that informs this. And it's collections carry futures, collections reveal the humanity in us, and collections manifest change. And I will explain better what I mean by this very soon. Hopefully it will provide I hope that it can provide a bit of interesting perspectives when thinking about heritage collections. So collections carry futures. So one thing that has been striking me a lot when engaging with like heritage collections and museum exhibitions is that objects are also carry the potential of unrealized futures. These can be utopias, they can be dystopias, or something more balanced in between. That objects also carry futures. They sometimes point towards the future, and sometimes they even point towards a future that didn't happen, a future that could have happened, a potential future. This, for example, struck me when I was visiting the War Childhood Museum in Sarajevo, which is a very strong museum about experiencing war as a child, and where stories go alongside objects that meant something for this person when he or she experienced war as a child. So it's also very you get very touched and moved by it, and it's also a very effective way of moving beyond narratives of victim and perpetrator, because in war everyone is a victim. In war every child is a victim, no matter which side it was on. So it was an effective way of moving beyond those dichotomies. But the objects there also spoke to me, because they also really pointed towards potential futures that could have happened if the war did not occur. For example, there is one object that is the prom dress, a piece of fabric. There was a prom dress to be worn in the spring of 1992, a dress, the fabric of a dress that was never made. So it's the fabric, and it points to a possible future of this dress being made. And this was in Sarajevo. So when the war happened, this dress was never made. And that's just one example of how an object also points towards a future that could have been possible, an alternative future. And I think that is something that is a potential in objects, the way that they orient towards the future, that could be utilized in such larger extent when activating heritage collections, I think, because it also does something in our mind when we think about the future as an alternative, as an option, as something different, what could have been, what could have happened. So the dreams and nightmares of the past that never came to be still persist to haunt us, and these potentials can be sensed as a capacity in objects or collections. And through these unrealized futures, alternatives to the present are provided, opening up perspectives of other possible futures. And I think that in that way, heritage can attempt to redeem these past potentials, that which never came to be. And also sometimes even hope can be found in what could have been possible, because maybe that is a possibility in the future, a future without war, for example. Maybe that is a possibility in the future. It can point towards the hopeful in some ways. It can make us hopeful for the future, to kind of look at these past potentials in objects that never came to be. So I think there's a great value in activating heritage collections, also in the way that they orient towards other possible futures, and think more in that way, possibly. The second point I would like to bring up is the way that heritage collections also reveal, or collections can also reveal, the humanity in us. This is a quotation from the Foresight literature study that we did 2 years ago. In an increasingly digital future, heritage can provide valuable insights concerning what it means to be human, and help inform the development of more ethical artificial intelligence and/or improve resilience to its adverse effects. So in an increasingly digital future, these perspectives on what it means to be human, what it means to be human in all of us, is increasingly important, I think. And also the heritage collections can play such an important role in that. One inspiring example that I come across is the Museum of Innocence in Istanbul by the Nobel Prize winner Orhan Pamuk, who created this museum and telling a story of two characters, only using objects from Istanbul that he come across in different ways. And it tells a specific story of Istanbul during a specific time period, but it also tells a very human story through the objects. For example, there's one wall just simply full of smoked cigarette butts, and it tells the story of the love relationship between this man who was in love with this woman who smoked all these cigarettes, and even though these characters are fictional, they never existed. By going through this museum and seeing all these objects, they become very, very real and very, very human. And I think it is through the way that the story is being told, through these kind of everyday objects, through the cigarettes that some people smoke, the smoked cigarettes. It tells a story of the human. And I think Orhan Pamuk also states this very well when he writes, the measure of a museum's success should not be its ability to represent a state, a nation, or a company, or a particular history. It should be its capacity to reveal the humanity of individuals. And I think for sure the heritage collections has a great role to play there, but maybe not always the most spectacular objects, but also the very small objects, the discarded object, what we throw away. And also the last point, heritage to cope with change and loss. So heritage conservations Operations may increasingly shift towards managing health and helping communities coming to terms with heritage loss. Inclusive, transparent, and sustainable processes for this will be needed. This is very much of relevance in the context of climate crisis, of wars. Heritage loss is going to be part of the future, and this is something that we have to cope with in different ways, and also in some ways learn from. So what can heritage collections tell us about letting go and of accepting change? And aren't these stories of loss and accepting change precisely the kind of stories that reveal the humanity in us? Because heritage collections make visible and is in itself a manifestation of change over time. They show how humans have adapted to and learned to live with loss linked to, among other things, climate disasters or war, and how its consequences can continue to develop over incredible time spans. So in this role, cultural heritage can increase resilience, which means a better ability to handle and overcome crisis and loss in our own lives. And the climate crisis, the environmental pollution, and wars means that this ability will become increasingly important in the future. So how objects also tell stories of overcoming crisis, overcoming loss, overcoming change, and moving on. I see a great value in them, I think, also to learn how to deal with it in our own lives. I think Museum of Broken Relationships is a good example of that, a museum that focuses on telling stories of objects related to heartbreak and how people overcome moving forward from a relationship that broke up or never was successful. An unusual story, maybe we hear more about the love stories, but also the love that didn't succeed and how we move forward with that through stories of objects, I think is also important, also significant in terms of coping with change, coping with loss. And I think that the Museum of Broken Relationship takes a quite innovative approach in that way, also telling the stories through objects, through the objects we dealt with in that situation. So yeah, as a summary here, heritage collections can be activated to address several crucial societal issues for building a more sustainable future. I have made a few points here, but many more can be made. This does not mean that they will always fulfill their potential for sustainable development. Instead, it depends entirely on how we activate them today. Foresight is a way of engaging with the future that can make us think differently about the value in our collections for the future, informing our practices today. However, foresight is still not widely known or used within the heritage sector, and when it is used, it is most often not moving beyond the sector and also an expert-driven process. More cross-sectoral and participatory foresight is needed, and this will also create more options for the future, since a more diverse and inclusive foresight process will also likely generate a larger array of possible futures beyond status quo or the already expected. I was very happy to present here today, and I'm also happy to answer any questions you may have about the presentation. Thank you very much.
A big thanks to Gustav, who will be joining us for the Q&A session shortly. So if you have any questions for him, please put them into the Q&A box. So now I will introduce our lightning talk speakers. And here they are. So we'll start with the presentation by Darian Stieber, the Executive Director of the Partnering Initiative in the UK, but it's also a global organization. Dr. Stieber is an internationally recognized pioneer of the theory and practice of multi-sector partnerships, and is also an ecosystem builder. Then we'll have a triple joint presentation by Zoitsa Gikini, Book and Paper Conservator at the National Library of Greece, Maria Crini, Conservator of Cultural Heritage and Museologist at the Directorate of Conservation of Ancient and Modern Monuments at the Hellenic Ministry of Culture, and Athena Papadaki, archaeologist, also at the Director of Archaeological Museums, Exhibitions and Educational Programs of the Hellenic Ministry of Culture in Greece. That will be followed by a lightning talk by Helen Wilson, the Sector Development Manager for London and Science and Technology Archives at the United Kingdom National Archives. Then we'll have Costanza Landini, who is a program specialist at the Latin American Caribbean Environment and Energy theme of the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. The next talk will be delivered by Dr. Matteo Bagnasco, who is the Culture Goal Manager at the Compagnia di São Paulo Foundation in Italy. And last but not least, we'll have a joint presentation, a team volunteers of Apoio Online the Association for Heritage Preservation in the Americas, delivering the last but not least lightning talk today. So please remember, as we play the videos, if you have questions for the presenters, let's please put them in the Q&A box. So let's start with Darren Stebe's talk, which explores how cross-sector collaboration can unlock innovation, creativity, and broader impact for collections-based organizations. The presentation highlights both the promise and the complexity of partnering, emphasizing the need to professionalize collaboration through skills development, institutional readiness, and shared standards, and how a strategic investment in these areas can transform partnerships into powerful engines for sustainable development. So let's watch Darian's lightning talk presentation.
Hello, my name is Darren Stibbe, and I am delighted to be able to join this important conference, albeit virtually. I'm the Executive Director of the Partnering Initiative. We are an international NGO that for the last 20 years or so has been dedicated to really professionalizing and driving effective cross-sector collaboration. We work extensively with the United Nations, with NGOs, with foundations, companies, codifying effective partnering practice and building the institutional capabilities for partnerships to thrive. Now, much of the conference will be talking about the opportunities for collaboration, about how by working together, you're able to deliver far more, combining resources to deliver more innovatively, more creatively, reaching new and bigger audiences. Now, I'm going to talk about how to get the vision where collaboration becomes the new normal, how working with other sectors of society becomes a standard operating model, a first approach, not a last-minute add-on. The challenge is that collaboration is challenging, and collaboration across societal sectors who are unfamiliar partners is even more challenging. Because, of course, all your partners have their own interests, their own incentives, their own values, their own behaviors, their own systems, their own language, even sometimes, their own jargon. And trying to do something collectively that creates significant value for all can be frustrating. It can take a significant amount of time, and too many partnerships are simply not delivering enough compared with the efforts that are put in. Now, back in 2024, with the United Nations, we undertook a year of research, reaching out to hundreds of people from around the world to really understand what does it going to take to drive collaboration far more systematically in order that collaboration becomes the new normal and is far more effective than it is today. Now, the findings were clear and unequivocal. If we want partnerships to happen at scale, we need to invest in building the enabling accelerators for widespread partnering. And here today, I'll talk a little bit about 4 levels of investment that are required. Firstly, at the individual level, we need individuals to have the professional partnering skills that allow them to make the best, most effective, robust partnerships. Now, what are those skills? We talk about the must-have competencies. So the M in must is around mindset. When you are collaborating, it's not all about yourself. It's around how we collectively can deliver significant value. It's about understanding that actually we alone don't have all the solutions, and that by working together, we can do so much more. It's about a humility to understand the fact that others have great ideas, sometimes better than our own ideas, but more importantly, bring those ideas together and we can deliver something so much more. The U is about understanding of other societal sectors, understanding how they think and work and operate, and the values and incentives behind them, the language they use. So really understanding your partners. The S is around the skills, the human relationship building skills, the negotiation skills, the having difficult conversations, because partnerships sometimes can get really challenging. All of those so-called soft skills that can be some of the hardest skills. But then we also need the the T in the must-have, the technical knowledge of partnering. What makes for an effective partnership? What goes in a partnering agreement? All of these things. Now, together, we know that we need to bring all of these skills around the table far more widely, far more effectively. And that means sending staff perhaps through training or even through mentored professional practice, professional development rather, to help them become reflective partnership practitioners. Secondly, we need organizations to become far more institutionally fit for partnering. So having all the elements in place to really be able to smoothly drive collaboration. So many organizations we work with, from the biggest international NGOs down to the smallest community organizations, are really not set up to be able to collaborate. They really need to have the systems and processes in place, the leadership, the culture for collaboration. And that requires really analyzing your own organization and see where it's lacking and put in place the partnering policies and approaches and systems and internal guidance for effective partnering. Thirdly, we need those mechanisms for collaboration, those mechanisms that can bring together people around the table to identify good partnership ideas and that can then be supported to really turn into actual effective partnerships. We need the places, the spaces to work together. And then finally, partnerships themselves need to be set up to good practice standards. We know how to make a partnership effective. We know the building blocks of effective collaboration from the fundamentals of creating value through the relationship that we need to build, through how it's set up and structured, and the management and leadership required. But that means going through a proper process of partnering to align the partners together, develop those building blocks. Sometimes that might mean investing in a third party, a neutral party that can help all the partners through that process. If at these four levels we are able to invest in our partnerships, invest in the capabilities, invest in the infrastructure for collaboration, that way we can significantly drive collaboration and help for it to become the new normal.
Okay, so thanks to Darian, and hopefully he'll be able to join us later today. I know he's in the United Nations General Assembly, for sure, like fostering some meaningful partnerships over there. So next we'll watch the presentation by Zoe, Maria, and Athena about a pioneering interministerial partnership in Greece that's advancing sustainable development goals through cultural collaboration. This initiative, this partnership involves the establishment of a Greek national node for ICCROM's Our Collections Matter initiative, highlighting efforts to boost SDG literacy at the national level, design innovative public programs, and foster knowledge exchange across museums and libraries. The talk contributes to a broader conversation on institutional cooperation and sustainable models of public sector engagement. Let's watch it.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to be here today at ICCROM's Collections 2030 and Beyond Global Conference. We will present a newly launched collaboration between two directorates of the Hellenic Ministry of Culture, the Directorate for Conservation and the Directorate for Archaeological Museums, and the National Library of Greece, as national nodes for ICCROM Our Collections Matter program. As this is a joint presentation, colleagues from both institutions will share this announcement. Together, we aim to present the vision behind our project, our early steps and achievements, and some reflections from the beginning of this 3-year journey. I am Zoe Guini from the National Library of Greece, and I will begin by introducing this partnership. Both institutions share a deep commitment to public service and a strong belief that institutional synergies can achieve far more than the sum of their parts. Furthermore, we have a long-standing relationship with ICCROM. Building on this foundation, the National Library, with its mission to preserve and provide access to knowledge, and the Ministry of Culture, with its strategic reach and policy-making capacity, have joined forces to design a program that serves the public in innovative and meaningful ways. A diverse working group of 10 professionals, archaeologists, historians, conservators, and museologists, brings a wealth of expertise and perspectives to the table in order to promote the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals through the OCM program. What makes this team exceptional is not only its specialized background, but also its adaptability and the fact that we share a history of successful collaboration and trust. At the heart of this effort are 4 focal points, 2 from the National Library of Greece and 2 from the Ministry of Culture, who form the core team and maintain a direct engagement with ICROM representatives.
Hello, I'm Maria Krini from the Directorate for Conservation of the Ministry of Culture. Our goal is to shape a creative, high-impact partnership that promotes low-cost, easily adaptable tools to help Greek museums and libraries address current challenges aligned with the SDGs. This program offers a unique opportunity to drive innovation and maximize cultural impact across museums and libraries while embedding sustainability at its core. By combining our knowledge, expertise, networks, and resources, we enhance efficiency, ensure timely implementation, and extend our reach to diverse professional communities and audiences. This approach strengthens the program's capacity to deliver long-term value in the cultural heritage sector. Although we are still at the starting line, the progress made so far has been both promising and inspiring. Together, we have built a shared framework for collaboration, set clear thematic priorities, and launched the first steps of our pilot projects. The project officially began with the formation of the working group and the signing of a memorandum of understanding with ICROM. After 4 months of regular meetings, we established our methodology and defined the work plan. This led to the official launch of the program in Greece last June, following ICROM's global rollout. The Greek launch introduced selected libraries and museums to the OCM program and the SDGs, encouraging active participation and providing shared resources and tools to enhance public engagement with cultural collections.
Hello, I am Athina Papadaki from the Directorate of Archaeological Museums of the Ministry of Culture. Our team's strong interpersonal connections enable problem solving, a shared approach to planning, and a forward-looking atmosphere during meetings. As with any collaboration, of course, challenges have emerged. Differences in institutional culture, administrative processes, and resource allocation have required careful negotiation and mutual understanding. We navigate these complexities with patience, transparency, and a shared sense of purpose. What makes this partnership particularly compelling is its dynamic nature. We are not simply implementing a fixed plan. We are building a living collaboration that adapts, responds, and evolves. By sharing our early experiences, we aim to contribute to a broader dialogue on how public institutions can collaborate effectively, sustainably, and creatively. We invite you to reflect with us on the value of starting strong, not with all the answers, but with a clear vision, a willingness to listen, and a commitment to building something meaningful together. And finally, we urge you to stay connected with the OCM program and follow the progress of this national initiative. Thank you for your attention.
So thanks to Zoe, Maria, and Athena for the presentation. They will be joining us for the Q&A session. Now we turn to Helen's presentation, which highlights the leadership role of the UK National Archives in supporting archives of all types across England to become more inclusive, accessible, and future-ready. We'll hear how strategic partnerships and ongoing consultation with the sector help shape a responsive leadership model, one that fosters sustainable development through collaboration, tailored support, and shared expertise. Let's watch it.
Hello, I'm Helen Wilson, Sector Development Manager at the National Archives UK. Archives are repositories of evidence, stories, and memory with documents that aid legal certainty, shed light on personal and shared histories, and inform our collective national and international identities. In this presentation, I'll explain how the UK National Archives leadership role for archives in England is underpinned by partnership with the archive sector it leads, and how this partnership shapes how we support sustainable development in archives in England. The National Archives UK is the official repository of the UK Government. It is a non-ministerial department of the UK Government, allied to the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, and as such is working to meet or exceed the UK Government's targets, for example, of achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Based in Richmond, near London, the National Archives UK is a working archive with responsibility under the Public Records Act of 1958 to preserve the collection, digital and analogue, whilst also providing access to it. Our activities are led by our strategic plans, currently Archives for Everyone, and by our vision for our bicentenary in 2038, by when we plan to be, amongst other things, a genuinely inclusive, collaborative and available National Archive, and a demonstrably sustainable National Archive, leading the archive sector both through our expertise and by example. You can follow our progress via our annual reports, which include our environment and sustainability reports, in which our activities are aligned with the SDGs. But since 2011, we are also the sector lead for archives in England. Our approach to the leadership role is a collaborative one, supporting partnerships and working to encourage a sustainable and innovative archive sector. Our dedicated archive sector leadership team works with all types and sizes of archives, and you can see a range of our support offer on this snapshot of our webpage. Additionally, as archive sector lead, we also work together with the archive sector to deliver the ambitions of the UK Government's vision for archives, specifically trust, openness and enrichment. Following the 10-year review of our leadership, which was led by consultants and included feedback from the archive sector, the archive sector leadership team identified partnership working as one of the 3 areas of focus for the development of this leadership role. Partnership with the sector is essential in our ability to support the sector in making transformative change, including in sustainability. It provides us with evidence of sector needs, ambitions and challenges, built on relationships through regional support and network support, and the creation of opportunities for feedback, for example, sector surveys and sector consultations. This is a continually evolving process to capture changing needs. Combining this information with knowledge of our leadership remit and resources, we tailor our support offer to enable archives to make impactful change in their contexts. We do this through creating advice and guidance on our web pages, providing events and training, all of which are free, as well as a suite of grants and funding specific to the archive sector. Additionally, we support archives in helping each other, for example, by celebrating their successes in advocacy documents such as A Year in Archives, which you can find on our website. We hire archives and archive consultants to create the guidance needed for the sector, and we support sector networks. For example, in 2022 we funded 3 projects in which 3 archives in England used resources from the OCM toolkit to improve their sustainability. These were the Box, the Black Cultural Archives and Harrow Archives at Headstone Manor and Museum. In planning these, we considered feedback from events, such as the Archive Supporting Environmental Sustainability event, the recordings of which are freely available at the link at the bottom of this slide. We also considered feedback from consultations and surveys which showed that while there was interest from the archive sector in sustainable development, there were significant barriers to change in the form of lack of funding and lack of time. As a result, we felt it important to provide funding to archives involved in these projects to help them backfill archivist time, pay for materials and expertise, for example. We also provided recommendations on the resources that may be of value. The year-long projects were successful, and we provided an opportunity for participants to share their experience with the wider sector via a webinar, the recording of which will be available on the National Archives YouTube channel soon. I've also recommended the archives involved to other archives who are interested in completing similar projects. Another example, which I can speak about at another time, is how we've worked with the archive sector to create carbon literacy training, which we're rolling out with the aim that the archive sector will roll it out themselves. In conclusion, while we are the archive sector lead for archives in England, it is only through partnership with the archive sector that we lead and other stakeholders that we can provide the tailored, impactful support needed to achieve a sustainable archive sector. Thank you.
Thanks to Helen, who will be joining us also shortly in the Q&A session. Next, we'll hear a lightning talk by Costanza Landini, highlighting how intersectoral partnerships can harness collections as powerful tools for sustainable development. Drawing on the UNDP Latin American Caribbean team's experience, the presentation showcases how collaboration with indigenous communities, governments, and other sectors can link environmental conservation with community empowerment. It also underscored the role of legal frameworks safeguarding indigenous rights and calls on heritage organizations to actively engage in shaping inclusive and resilient futures. Let's watch it.
I'm Costanza Landini. I'm program specialist at the UNDP Regional Hub in the Environment and Energy team. It's a pleasure to be here with you today at the Collection 2030 and Beyond conference organized by ICROM. I'm really happy to share the perspective of UNDP and see how intersectoral partnerships can be key to advance the sustainable development, putting heritage and collection at the center. So today I really want to start by giving a brief intro on what we do at UNDP. And so we work in 170 countries, and our work really focuses on human development that goes from prosperity, governance, crisis resilience, and a healthy planet. When I started to discuss with the organizers of the event, I really thought, wow, collections and heritage are not really at the center of our discussion on sustainable development. But by looking at collections and heritage as living assets, we can really twist the narrative, expand and broaden the number of partners that really work with collection and heritage for sustainable development. And so they can really become catalysts for a systemic change. Today, I really want to talk with you about the Pro-Amazonia project. This is an initiative that UNDP does and implements with the government of Ecuador, whose goal is really to improve and promote forest conservation and develop deforestation-free value chains in the cocoa, in coffee, in palm oil, etc. But the interesting part of Pro-Amazonia is that UNDP and the government of Ecuador has worked together to bring to other partners to the table. So here is really the partnership element that is relevant. We work with the government at national level, at local level, but also with the financial institutions such as Ban Ecuador that provides green credit lines to producers, and also with the Green Climate Fund, which is a mechanism that has mobilized resources for deforestation-free production practices and to implement the project. So the communities are at the centers. farmers are indigenous communities. And so if we really make the connection, they are those that have this traditional heritage, that have and embody the cosmovision of indigenous people. Therefore, we could bring the perspective of heritage and collection to projects connected to sustainable development, similar to Pro-Amazonia. So that's what I want to convey today, really, that collection-based organization can be better connected to the indigenous heritage with the climate and nature finance to enhance these cultural preservation efforts. They can facilitate and strengthen these partnerships, working with indigenous communities, national government entities, and international institutions. There are also some legal frameworks, such as the Escazú Agreement, that, for instance, is binding for Latin American and Caribbean countries, that really place environmental justice at the center, as well as indigenous people. So collection-based organizations can try also to identify these legal frameworks within which they can operate. And if we work together, we can really, put collections and heritage at the center of our initiatives and see them as an engine for sustainable development. Therefore, today, I really want to make a call to action, a call to partner together. I think this space that ICROM organizes is so valuable because we can really, meet, connect, and ideas can develop from here. So we can develop more cross-sectoral partnerships with the public, the private sector, academia, and development actors. And we can put collections and heritage at the center of the discourse around sustainable development and the 2030 agenda. Therefore, by working together, we can really ensure that collection and heritage play a transformative role in building a resilient, inclusive, and sustainable societies. I really thank you for your attention. I'm really open to follow up this conversation bilaterally, and it was a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks.
Thanks, Constanza, for the presentation. Hopefully she'll be able to join us for the Q&A session. The next presentation is by Matteo Bagnasco that showcases the role of philanthropy in advancing heritage partnerships for sustainable development. We'll hear how the Compagnia di São Paulo Foundation in Italy aligns its strategic actions with the UN's Agenda 2030, mobilizing resources and fostering public-private collaboration to elevate cultural heritage as a driver for inclusive growth. With a focus on long-term investment, institutional capacity, and territorial development, the Foundation's approach offers valuable insights into how philanthropic leadership can shape impactful and sustainable cultural initiatives. Let's watch it.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for your kind invitation. As outlined in the multi-annual strategic document 2025-2028, our foundation, Fondazione Compagnia di San Paolo, aligns its strategic actions with the United States Agenda 2030, Sustainable Development Goals. One of the foundation cross-cutting methodologies is mobilization and partnership is a key to this effort. It focuses on mobilizing additional resources and consolidating networks to extend the impact of intervention over time. Collection-based institutions play an important role from this perspective. Within this framework, heritage collection play a vital role in fostering inclusive and sustainable growth. Our foundation tries to support them. We view culture and participation as a key element for people well-being, social cohesion, and sustainable development, as I said, of our catchment area. How we do that? Public-private partnership are a key elements of our strategy. Through our culture department, the Foundation experiments forms of public-private partnership to encourage opportunities for joint investment and innovate the conservation and the management of the most important cultural heritage elements. Another important tool for us are strategic agreements according to this multi-year approach. Our foundation works in partnership with public bodies through strategic agreements according to, as I said, multi-year approach, which guarantee the implementation of projects on cultural heritage by optimizing the use of committed public resource. Moreover, as a founding member of major cultural institution in the northwest of Italy, theater, but also research center and mainly the most important museums, the foundation aims to elevate cultural assets as driver of development, local development, talent attraction, and social equity. Institutional capacity to manage investment and ensure long-term return is essential in this historic period of substantial funds like the Next Generation EU program and at government level what we call PNRR. In the current context of substantial funding opportunities, such those that I mentioned before, building institutional capacity to manage investment and ensure long-term returns, both economic and social, is more essential than ever. Our program on capacity building that we call Next Generation EU try to work on this goal with big investment to make cultural heritage bodies, professionals, institutions more sustainable and more impactful.
Thanks to Matteo, who will also be joining us shortly for the Q&A. So we close this lightning talk series with the presentation from Apoio Online, the Association for Heritage in the Americas, delivered in the voice of Beatriz Raspo, Apoio Online's Executive Director, and offering a powerful example of how long-term collaboration can drive social transformation through heritage preservation. For over 3 decades, Apoio Online has worked across the Americas and Portuguese and Spanish-speaking countries to empower professionals and communities, expand access, and reduce inequalities. We'll now hear how regional and global networks can be mobilized to foster inclusion, solidarity, and active engagement in cultural heritage, demonstrating thus the impact of collective action and sustained partnership. Let's watch it.
Good day. It is a pleasure to introduce Apoio Online, Association for Heritage Preservation of the Americas, and the program Manos à la Obra. For over 35 years, Apoio Online has been dedicated to connecting and empowering cultural heritage professionals across the Americas and Portuguese and Spanish-speaking countries. One of our most beloved initiatives is the Manos à la Obra, or Helping Hands in English, a community-based preservation program that brings to life Apoio Online's deepest belief that everyone can preserve, and when given the chance, they want to. During Apoio Online regional conferences, we partner with local libraries, museums, archives, historical homes, and other institutions to carry out hands-on basic collections care activities to preserve selected collections on a voluntary basis. But here's what matters most. The work is based on the needs of the institution. It is their collection, their priorities, their story. We don't arrive with a fixed agenda. We listen first. And then we contribute with what we have, our time, our skills, and our hands alongside volunteers, students, and community members. In 2018, we worked with the Municipal Historical Archive of the city of La Antigua in Guatemala. In 2019, we brought Manos à la Obra to the public archives of the state of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where we cleaned books, rehoused photographs and negatives, prepared adjustable covers for large volumes, using preservation supplies especially donated for this initiative. In 2021, we faced a challenge. Like so many others during the pandemic, we had to adapt. So we brought Manos a la Obra to the Dominican Republic, but this time we did it virtually. We partnered with Biblioteca Ateneu Amantes de la Luz and with the general support of ACRA, the Assembly of Conservators and Restorers of Argentina. We offered remote training in surface cleaning, rehousing, prepping materials for dedetization, and building an emergency plan. Over 50 people participated in this event, both online and in person, including the library's director. And for the staff, it was a milestone, their first ever training in preventive conservation. It was a powerful reminder that even in difficult times, with creativity and collaboration, we can still build capacity and empower local teams. In July 2025, we partnered with Biblioteca Presidente Roberto F. Chiari, Panama's first public library and a key site of national memory. Nearly 40 volunteers from 11 countries, including staff from the library and National Archives, came together to clean and rehouse fragile books, periodicals, oversized materials, and photographs related to the Panama Canal's history. And thanks to our amazing media team, the work was fully documented in video, capturing not just the preservation effort, but the shared energy, emotion, knowledge exchange, and commitment to preserving memory. The library leadership and staff were deeply moved by the care shown to their collection and community. And here's the beautiful part. Manos a la Obra is inspiring others to replicate its principles across the region, showing that preservation can be truly accessible when grounded in community engagement. In 2019, in Portugal, we held Manos a la Obra event at the Casa de Monte Redondo Museum, and this was really special. High school students, teachers, and elders came together to preserve their own family photographs. One participant, an elderly woman, brought a photo of her wedding day, and she said, and I quote, "No one ever told me this was history," and end of quote. And that was really an unforgettable moment. This Portugal project received the 9th edition of the Ibermuseus Award in Education. That's what Manos a la Obra does. It validates people's memories, it builds community, it turns preservation into an act of inclusion and sometimes even healing. In 2025, we brought Manos a la Obra to Bolivia during the 2nd International Heritage Conservation Conference in La Paz. At the Gonzalo B. de Grau Uturi Library, volunteers worked in small teams to clean books, preserve and rehouse large photographs, and update records. And the best part? The library invited them to keep coming back. And that's the spirit of Manos a la Obra. Hands-on work, grassroots partnerships, and lasting impact. One community, one memory, one helping hand at a time. So I invite you to learn more about Apoio Online, Manos a la Obra, and our other initiatives on our webpage and social media. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Muito obrigada.
Thanks to Apoio Online for this inspiring last presentation. So we'll now move on to the Q&A live session. So I invite our speakers to join me here in the virtual room and turn their cameras and microphone on. With the big thanks for your contributions. And we'll start with Gustav, because I know Gustav is busy, has to be teaching in a short while. So Gustav, this question for you. So if you think about museums, libraries, and archives that are willing to engage more in futures thinking and in futures approach, thinking about their teams, also the communities they serve. So what practical advice would you give to these organizations so that they can really kind of engage and use futures thinking to foster their contribution to sustainable development? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. And as mentioned, I am a little bit in a rush at the moment since I have teaching coming up in 10 minutes. So I'll try to keep, it's a very good question. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. First, I mean, if there is an interest to engage in futures thinking at the organization, I would also recommend building up some kind of team that has a responsibility to work on these issues at the organization, so that there is a clear that someone or a group are actually having the responsibility to work on this actively. If it becomes everyone's responsibility, there's a risk that it becomes no one's responsibility. But this team would preferably be like crossing different departments at the organization, so that futures thinking is not bounded to a specific department, because it should be something that is holistically being part of the whole organization. So the team that is responsible could preferably be from different departments at the organization, and also focusing very much on also building partnerships outside of the organization to other institutions, to communities, not thinking about building these networks, these partnerships. I think that is crucial in order to actually get it going, and also make it more sustainable, so that it becomes an ongoing process, because futures thinking is not something that can be done through one workshop. It's something that has to be an ongoing process. And also to, once the kind of structures are somehow in place, engage with the different resources that are available out there, open access, because there are quite a lot of resources out there. The UK government has a good toolkit that is available, open access. The American Alliance of Museums have developed a toolkit for strategic thinking, strategic foresight. So American Alliance of Museums, the UK government toolkit, and also the work that ECROM has been doing with strategic foresight. All of this can be a very useful resource if you want to start going on with this process within your own organization and building these important partnerships through the process of doing it. So that's my quick answer to it. Thank you very much. I have to go teach now, but thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to attend this conference.
Thank you so much, Gustav. Thanks for your contributions. Now we move on to Darian with the next question. Darian, I just told the participants here that you were at the UN General Assembly. Forging, I think, meaningful partnerships. So the question for you is, as a multi-sector partnership pioneer and an ecosystem builder, so from your perspective, where do you see collections-based organizations such as museums, libraries, and archives engaging in effective partnerships to support sustainable development today? I mean, do you see them at all from your perspective? And if not, how could the sector, strengthen that engagement and that participation in meaningful partnerships, as you hinted in your presentation? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jose, and I think it's a real pleasure to be here today. And just in a sort of a brief response, it's looking out to see what others want from you about where their interests are and where they can be influenced. And really, it's almost sort of shifting the mindset to be outward looking, to really see what are the other institutions, what are the various companies which might have some sort of level of interest, who are the various community groups that there may be. As soon as you realize that where there is any sort of overlap of interest, then there is the potential to then just have those discussions, to then come up with sort of innovative, creative ideas collectively together with them. It's quite hard to say, sitting within a particular sector, well, what are those opportunities for collaboration? It's only when you start working and talking and thinking with those others that collectively you can actually find these absolute sort of win-win bases. And of course, I mean, you're in the most amazing position with these collections. You are these centers, these access of research, of art, of all of these different areas. So the first step is understanding the resources that you have, talking with the range of different stakeholders and others that could potentially have an interest, and then collectively coming up with ideas that really suit all of you.
Okay, thanks, Darren, for the practical advice. I hope it will resonate with the colleagues here. And now we move on to Zoe and Maria. So the question for you is based on this pioneering interministerial partnership that you established to strengthen the role and recognition of both the museums and libraries, the collections-based organizations for sustainable development. So what would be your message to other governments, other government organizations working in or with the cultural sector, and who are also willing to strengthen their contribution and recognition in terms of sustainable development-oriented actions. Thank you.
Hello, Jose Luis. Thank you for the question and thank you for inviting us. So I would say that go ahead. It's a great experience. It really makes a difference, and you can feel that actually from the early stages of the collaboration. We are in the same path. Libraries, archives, museums, galleries, all cultural sector is in the same path. It might be in different countries, might be like in different institutions, might be in different ministries, but it doesn't really make any difference since in the very essence of our work is the same, and we are all having same goals, same. We expect the same things. We want to support society to be more welcome to SDGs, and we want them to be as much as involved as possible. So I would say go on. It's a great experience as long as it's structured, as long as the collaboration is good, and there's a good atmosphere and a friendly, supporting environment. It's a great way to start.
Thank you, Zoe. I don't know, Maria, do you want to add something? Thank you.
The message for me is the same. I totally agree with Zoe. It's a great experience to share ideas and knowledge. And as Zoe said, we all have the same goal. All cultural institutions with collections, we do share the same goal. And we need these partnerships to enhance our actions and, I don't know, make things better.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we move to the UK with Helen. Helen, the question for you is, how is the National Archives partnering with the sector at the national level to drive transformation that supports a sustainable future? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Louis, and thank you for the invitation to present today. We spoke about the guidance and the funding that we offer tailored to sector needs based on working with those communities and the archive sector there who are directly working with the community. So we're getting really great feedback from them about what the challenges are and what the kind of needs are and what their interests are to try and move forward into a more sustainable future, and definitely get the sense that there is a lot of interest in wanting to do more, but there are also these challenges, and funding being one, and time to really look into things being another, and level of knowledge around certain things. There's a lot of wonderful resources out there. Sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming, but having places that can direct, so like the ICROM OCM toolkit is amazing, and so it was really great to work with archives to trial that and with the projects that I mentioned. But another one of the areas really that we're trying to help is in the training aspect, and specifically around carbon literacy training. So trying to really help the sector in becoming more aware of how they can work to decarbonize their working context. It also translates across to their personal lives as well. So there's ripple effects that sort of move out from the training. And so we've worked with the Carbon Literacy Project, which is initiated in the UK around, I think, over 10 years ago now. They created a training specifically to help raise awareness of carbon literacy and empower people to take action. And as part of it, you make pledges for action that will decrease carbon emissions. You make an individual pledge and you make a group pledge, and you follow an assessment process and become certified as carbon literate by the end. And that's all managed by the Carbon Literacy Project. But an amazing bit of this is that they've made it so that the course materials can be tailored to your particular context. So there's now, if you look at their web pages, there's a wonderful array of different areas that have tailored this training, and archives is now one of those. So we've worked to create an archive version, and to do that, we've done that with the archive sector. We've worked with the Archives and Records Association of the UK and Ireland to ensure that we've got case studies and relevant information specific to the archive sector, because that way it'll be most impactful for the archive sector. We've worked crucially with sustainability consultant Lorraine Finch, LFCP, who has a wealth of experience in this area. And it's meant that we've now got this training material that we are then delivering to the sector for free. So archives across England can participate in this training for free. The key bit, though, is that then those that have participated and become certified carbon literate can very easily become a trainer themselves. So then we are able to share that training with those trainers, and they can then roll it out in their own context. And this partnership is really crucial, really, in the way that we can make most impact, because there's only so much that we can do as the National Archives, so much money that we can put into running the courses and hiring trainers to deliver them. And by being able to give this training for free to those in UK and Ireland, they're able to roll out training that would have cost quite a bit for them to create themselves. It lowers the cost, makes it more affordable for them to run it. They can deliver it themselves and to their peers, and that makes it even more impactful. So we're really excited about this, and we're into like a year or two of doing this and rolling it out, and this year very much picking up the pace on the sharing aspect of the course materials, and really looking to try and evaluate the success of it as well. That's one of the things that's come through the conference, getting that data to show your impact, because that helps to inform for future decision making. So that's one of those areas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Helen. Now we move to Costanza. Hello, Costanza. Nice to see you.
Hi, Jose Luis. Good morning for me. Good afternoon, everyone.
Okay. So there's some good evening, I think, too.
Yeah, also.
But yeah, based on your experience, Costanza, so how can we ensure that indigenous voices remain central in these partnerships, especially when they involve like large organizations and large funders? And is there a role for collections and collections-based organizations to help amplify their voices in these initiatives? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jose Luis. Yes, I think as I was also mentioning in my presentation, I really see this event as the starting point where we can really think more, about indigenous people and how collections-based organization can participate in these development projects. Working with the grassroots organization, local organizations from UNDP, we already involve, communities and indigenous people in our work. Also articulating the initiatives with these national organization that represent indigenous communities. For instance, when I was working in Colombia, I was often, meeting the organization of indigenous people from Colombia, and then they have another, mechanism for the Amazon region. So I think creating these spaces where also collection-based organization can participate, can identify what is the heritage that we have to, protect, and how to, put it at the center of these initiatives. So I would say really identifying the organizations that act at local level, also the local governments with which development cooperation usually work, is really like the bridge, because as you also mentioned, there are, big financing institutions, big multilateral organization, and obviously they cannot really reach out the grassroots organization alone. So I really see, that articulating the different actors is the way where we can strengthen, this partnership at local level. So yeah, that would be my 2 cents on that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Costanza. Now we move to Italy with Matteo. And Matteo, for you, so from a funder's perspective, what would you recommend to museums, libraries, archives, and other collections-based organizations that are interested in mobilizing resources and engaging in meaningful partnerships to strengthen their contribution to sustainable development? So from the donor's perspective, what will be your practical recommendations to these organizations, small, medium, and large? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I would say one thing is not only create project, but also invest on itself, let's say, in some way. To work with this perspective, cultural institution has to change skin a little bit. And this requires, in my opinion, also a reflection of how the institution is managed, how the mission must be updated. So not only I say this in relationship with a foundation, not only propose projects, but also propose, let's say, to walk in a transformation on the institution itself. And the second recommendation is try more and more to work with other sectors, with research, with welfare education. This is something that is required in order to align the activity of every one of us to the sustainable goals. So to promote collaboration between different sectors.
Okay, thank you so much, Matteo. And then last but not least, so we move to Apoio Online. And Beatriz is here representing the team of volunteers. Thank you, Beatriz. So the question is, I mean, referring back to the Manos à la Obra, no example, that meaningful partnerships around collections, around heritage collections can be established with limited resources. And with that, we can help increase inclusion and access to cultural heritage and thus reduce inequalities and make more meaningful contributions to sustainable development. So from that experience, what tips would you have for collections-based organizations and professionals around the world who are willing to enhance their contributions to sustainable development? And I would like to link to a question also that we received in the Q&A in terms of how can we find more funding for training. So is that a matter of funding? I mean, what practical tips would you give to the colleagues here? Thank you.
Well, thank you, José Luis, and also thank you to all the contributions. They are so inspiring and amazing. So as mentioned, Apoio Online is a solely volunteer grassroots organization. So we have been doing this for 35 years. So a partnership is in our core. Everything that we do is through partnerships. And it can only be done through partnerships in many levels. And one of the most important partnerships that we have is with the community. We work with the community, through the community, and for the community. Everything that we do has this in mind. So, and it becomes then actually our goal when we work with those partnerships, that the impact and building bridges for this community and then having heritage collections as a means to reach out to them. They want to participate, they want to contribute, they want to be involved. So we see this as an opportunity to get all of us, when I mean all of us, is all of us, invested in preserving our joint memory. So we have done for every collaboration, for every event, for every initiative, we have dozens of collaborators, funders, donors, and people who join us to foster that building bridges and heritage preservation. So it is so of course it is about funds. You do have to have funds to make an event or to carry out an initiative. But I will tell you, the engagement of the volunteers is the number one funding resource that you have to make any project a success. So I would always encourage to involve the community around us, because they are the ones who we are actually preserving things for. Back to you, Zé.
Thank you so much, Beatriz, and thanks to all of our speakers. So we're running a little bit behind schedule, so we'll conclude the Q&A session here with the big thanks for your invaluable contributions and insights. And we'll have a 5-minute break, so a bit shorter today, after which we'll resume with the live intersectoral panel. So thank you so much and see you in 5. Okay. Welcome back, everyone, for the live intersectoral panel that opens a forward-looking conversation on the role of partnerships in strengthening the contribution of collections and collections-based organizations to sustainable development across all its pillars. So now I'm delighted to introduce to you our panelists for this conversation, and I kindly ask them to switch on their cameras. So we'll have Julia Pagel, Secretary General of the Network of European Museum Organizations, NEMO, who will be sharing the perspective from the museums networks. Then we'll have with us Tim Kong, the Digital Experience Manager at the Parliamentary Service in New Zealand, bringing, among other things, his experience in developing partnerships to implement the Pacific Virtual Museum project that empowers people in and of the Pacific Islands, enabling them to see, discover, and explore items of digitized cultural heritage that are held in collections around the world. We are also very pleased to have with us Faxon Banda, Chief of UNESCO's Unit for Documentary Heritage, contributing his expertise and experience in how partnerships support UNESCO's Memory of the World program and other initiatives. We also have with us today Johanna Leisner, the scientific representative of the Fraunhofer Society in Germany, whose expertise and experience includes the EIT Culture and Creativity Initiative by the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, and institutional partnerships dedicated to helping European cultural and creative sectors and industries to become more sustainable, then fostering interdisciplinary and cross-cultural collaboration, building new connections, and creating opportunities for stakeholders to innovate and deliver meaningful impact. Today, we also have the special participation of Marta Kali, the Senior Policy Advisor at the Joint SDG Fund. Marta brings to the conversation her experience and insights in providing high-level strategic advice across all areas of work of the SDG Fund, including interagency matters, program management and partnerships, as well as investment strategies across priority thematic areas. This is very important for the conversation today as we are talking about the contribution of collections and collections-based organizations to support the SDGs. You can find our panelists' full biography on the conference website. And to moderate the panel, I'm delighted to invite back Beatriz Rasco, the Executive Director of Apoio Online and also co-organizer of this conference. Beatriz's extensive experience in forging and sustaining partnerships across the heritage sector and beyond, and combined with her deep commitment to inclusion and collaboration, I think it makes her the ideal guide for today's conversation. So Beatriz, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, José Luis, for this so kind introduction and for inviting me to moderate this panel. I'm truly honored to be among those amazing panelists. It has been an extraordinary week with inspiring, thought-provoking conversations, presentations, highlighting the global challenges and opportunities to foster intersectoral collaboration around heritage collections. And the importance of partnership actually has been mentioned several times during the week in the sessions of people, planet, prosperity, and peace. And today we have the opportunity to dig deeper in this session entirely dedicated to partnership and reflect on, for instance, how do we build global intersectoral partnerships that truly last? How can collections and collections-based organizations not just participate, but actively strengthen these collaborations? And also, how can non-collections-based institutions intersect meaningfully with heritage collections to create mutual value? So I look forward to our panelists' conversations today, sharing their insights and experiences. So I would like to start by asking all of you, from your perspective, from your sector, how do you see the role of collections and collections-based organizations in today's global efforts and for sustainable development? And if collections-based projects are part of the scope of your partnerships, for example. So if I may start, for example, Julia, from your perspective, right, from NEMO, encompassing over 30,000 museums, what are your thoughts?
Hello, everybody, first of all, and thank you again for inviting me. Yeah, I mean, with Nemo, we, as you said, we represent the museum community and we advocate for museums as being those essential actors in societal transformation, whether it's through education, sustainability, digital innovation, civic engagement. And especially now in these critical times, museums are trusted places providing well-researched information, really helping to cultivate critical thinking and empathy. And I think museums are becoming more important in their social functions than ever. But I might be a bit biased because, of course, I love museums. So with Nemo, we've been advocating a lot for museums' power to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. And from my experience, I think the most impactful or powerful initiatives were actually the ones that were done in collaboration and cross-sectoral partnerships.
Thank you, Julia. Indeed, indeed. Tim, from your perspective as an educator and also digital experience manager, what do you think?
Kia ora koutou, everyone. Nissan Bolivanaka. Thank you for having me along as well. I'm joining from almost midnight here in Aotearoa, so it's lovely to be in the conversation. I think for me, in the pieces of work that I've led, partnership is about understanding that there are vast communities, and I was just reflecting on in the previous talks about the Indigenous focus, particularly from the UNDP programs. There are vast communities that have no knowledge of museums or archives or the worlds of libraries and galleries, and I think that the real challenge is how do we, within these institutions, step out to meet those communities? How do we build bridges to those communities? How do we welcome them in? And allow them to be in our spaces in ways that are safe, in ways that are caring, and in ways that enable them to walk through these worlds, because very often we hold many of their items or the items of their heritage and their people, and they don't know how they got there. And I think that's a really powerful opportunity for our institutions to start to flip maybe what it means to be in relationship in terms of welcoming Indigenous people in.
How do you see this happening? So what's the practical tip you have so that it can help us make this happen, to engage those communities?
Sorry, was that for me?
Tim, yes, I was following up.
Sorry. No, I think one of the things is to build. So, for example, Digital Pacific, which is the project I led, we built that to work for people who A, didn't know museums existed, and B, only had mobile phones and were also in low network environments. And so we built it to load fast, and we built it to load in ways that meant they could make sense of these worlds. It also meant that we were going to meet them where they were and to understand the environments they lived in, they worked in. Very often in the Pacific experience, cultural heritage priorities are well down the list of priorities for nations and funding. And so to understand, I think when we traveled to one island and we were told that the museum had a gigabyte of data per month, and anything outside of that they would have to pay for on their personal accounts. And so you understand that reality, you start to think differently around digital access and digitized access, and you have to start think differently around how you make these connections available to people.
Thank you, Tim, very much. That is a very important insight as well. Foxen, moving to you from the UNESCO perspective and your involvement with the Memory of the World initiative, what are your thoughts?
Yes, well, based on our experience, we believe that sort of heritage collections and collections-based organizations already make vital contributions to sustainable development in various ways. For example, as learning hubs, museums, libraries, and archives safeguard and provide access to knowledge accumulated over generations, such as traditional practices, scientific data, as well as cultural expressions that are essential for addressing today's challenges. For example, climate resilience and food security. A more practical example for us is our work around incorporating the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction in memory institutions' emergency preparedness plans. And we've got some funding dedicated to that as well through what we call the Global Initiative to Safeguard Documentary Heritage at Risk. But also going beyond that, we believe that memory institutions, along with their collections, empower marginalized voices by documenting their experiences and ensuring inclusivity in development narratives. In many countries, collections-based institutions drive cultural tourism as well, and we have worked with several of them, not least in Saudi Arabia, where we've got a project focusing on Alula as a tourist destination, along with the mountain inscriptions in that area. And partnerships, we would like to contend, are key, to all this, to try to amplify these contributions. For example, collaboration with governments helps align memory institutions with national development strategies. And we try to work with governments within the framework of what we call the 2015 recommendation concerning the preservation of and access to documentary heritage, including in digital form. But also we've got civil society partnerships that support advocacy and community engagement, while we also have private sector partnerships that bring in technological innovation, funding, and new platforms for outreach. For example, we've got a relationship with the Khalili Foundation, working with Wikimedia in order to get a team of volunteers trained to report on documentary heritage that is inscribed on the Memory of the World International Register, thereby increasing its potential for dissemination. We also have a strategic partnership with Google Arts and Culture, where they give us their platform, and we provide them with the content by way of inscribed documentary heritage. So these partnerships are key in trying to ensure that we contribute to SDGs in some fashion or other. Now, we can't say which SDGs we are directly, contributing to, but we can say that we are assisting in actualizing the commitments made with respect to promoting public access to information, broadening fundamental freedoms in the cultural ecosystem, but also in terms of targets looking at the protection of cultural heritage, in this case, documentary heritage within memory institutions. And beyond that, also targets focusing on the provision of quality education, especially if you link some of our initiatives with ASPINET. This is the UNESCO Associated Schools Network, to feature documentary heritage in teaching and learning. So yeah, that's about how much we are doing.
Thank you, Faxon. And thank you also for the examples of practical collaborations with the collections involved. And I would like then to move to Johanna. Johanna, from the perspective of the European Union as a funder, so how
Yes.
the role of the collections can be increased and those partnerships can become more sustainable.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to this important conference. And as you just said, the European Union is really doing a lot to enhance resilience of cultural heritage, including, of course, collections. And right now we have been publishing a report. No, it was 3 years ago. It was about how can cultural heritage become more resilient in times of climate change. And this report really has received a worldwide attention. and also was the initiative for the European Union together with the member states, where not only European member states can take part, but also partners, for example, from Egypt. It is a new program. It is called Resilient Cultural Heritage, and it will start probably next year in 2026. And there will be funding over 200 million euro over 7 years. And there will be dedicated calls. And I just want to stress that we still need research. I mean, of course, we need partnerships, but there are still a lot of research questions, how we can make our collections really resilient and safe in times of climate change and also other threats from geopolitical changes. So I would like really to put the strength and the focus on the research. And up to now, there have been also a lot of EU research projects dealing with this topic, green museums, green collections. And I would encourage every one of you to look into the publications of the EU, of DG Research, where all this research is published. And it was also the program of the European Institute of Technology, where we are dealing with culture and creativity. And even here, we also have a strategic topic group, Cultural Heritage, where we look into in the coming calls, how we can strengthen partnerships also beyond Europe, because that was also mentioned in the OMC report, Climate Change and Cultural Heritage, that we have to expand our cooperation outside Europe. And here I really would like to encourage everyone to look into these new calls, also from the EIT Culture and Creativity, together also partnerships not only with research institutions, with all kinds of stakeholders, and also extending it to companies, because we need companies who, for example, produce innovative materials, methodologies, how we can sustainably manage our collections. And we need, and museums and archives need a lot of energy to have stable indoor conditions. And here we really need sustainable solutions, how we can drop the energy demand and make our indoor environments and indoor climates much more sustainably friendly. And especially Europe is facing, Europe is warming twice as fast as other parts of the world. And here we are not really yet accustomed to higher temperatures, to long heat waves. And there we need cooling, and cooling is still something which is very energy intensive and not CO2 friendly. So here we still have a lot of problems which need to be accompanied by innovative research, not only in Europe, but from all over the world, because we cannot reinvent the wheel everywhere. So we need cooperation, and we can learn from each other. And that is my message. Invest in research and cooperation, because we cannot lose time. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna. Thank you for your insight. Then I would like then to move to Marta. Marta, from the SDG Fund perspective, right? So we are talking about sustainable development. So please enlighten us with your thoughts.
Thank you so much, and it's really a privilege to join this this panel today, and I listen with a lot of interest to the other panelists, because we at the Joint SDG Fund, we do not have a specific focus on collection. So I'm definitely not an expert like the other colleagues on the panel, but of course we have SDG, the SDGs. At the core of our mandate. So it's extremely relevant to the role of culture and the role of cultural institutions, and collection-based organizations is absolutely central to the to sensitizing and engaging the public and other institutions and creating collaborations to promote the SDGs. So we do perfectly understand it in the context of everything that, for instance, Faxon explained before, talking about knowledge hubs, platform for community and knowledge transmissions around the SDGs, as heritage preservation, as one of our colleagues before from UNDP was talking about, referring to some of our programs, for instance, in Colombia or in Costa Rica, and of course, Apoyo. As anchor of resilience, also in terms of in times of conflict, in times of climate disruptions, or with an important contribution also to agendas such as disaster risk reduction, as Faxon also was saying, and as labs for innovation, forward thinking, futures thinking, which is also a core part of our work across the system. The foresight and futures thinking is increasingly shaping the way in which we design programmatic interventions, and at least we also try to bring it increasingly into national development planning and partnerships with government. And I would say also, importantly, in the spirit of multilateralism, another element that I think clearly arises from this panel is like-minded institutions across borders that promote a certain understanding of sustainable development, of engaging citizens on the key issues of our time, sensitize around climate, provide an opportunity of cross-border engagement, global engagement around these issues for youth and other people that would be, and different parts of the populations that would be normally left behind, not engaged in the conversation. So there's so many absolutely critical aspects and values of this work for the SDGs. Now, when it comes to the Joint SDG Fund, and I should have probably started with that, we work through the United Nations development system on the ground. So we are a pooled fund system of the United Nations, of the development system in particular, a flagship mechanism that is really linked to the reform of the UN that sees the resident coordinators as empowered to build these partnerships and convene these partnerships, rather at country level, bringing the UN development agencies together. So a lot of what I could talk about is really the work that UNDP, UNESCO, UNICEF, all the entities of the UN could be doing together in this area to support government. So in alignment with national development strategies, in alignment enshrined in the UN national cooperation frameworks, sustainable cooperation frameworks, but really in partnership with governments. So we provide a tool for partnership. We provide a tool for convening, and of course, also catalytic resources. And there are two important aspects that I would like to highlight, maybe are really specific to our mandate and are specific to the type of partnerships we build as a tool, again, of the UN system, but that do not see at the moment collections at the center of our strategies, which is policy and financing. These two aspects, how can we influence policy? How can we create feedback loops for policy change? So something that is sustainable beyond one initiative, one program, but that really has an impact on the development of sustainable policies around, for instance, cultural institutions. And the financing element, how do we bring partnerships that are catalytic to then mobilizing also financing in all these important areas that were highlighted by colleagues on the panel?
Thank you, Marta. And this is really important. So how we can now be together with the collections and fundings, and as you said, sustainable policies and finance elements. So we all are aware of how to approach that. So we do have, for example, a question here on the Q&A, and I will address that. For example, how we do ensure that funding is being distributed and redistributed equitably. So how does this work?
This is a question for me still.
Yes.
In which way? The funding distributed equitably across?
Yeah, so how can we, what do we need to do to ensure that the fundings are distributed equitably, ensuring that's the question, not concentrated with certain institutions or disconnected from the very communities?
Yes, I understand.
Those are represented. Yeah.
So I mean, this goes to the core of what it's how do we design partnerships, right? It's The approach of the Joint SDG Fund is, again, grounded on building sustainable partnerships with, we collaborate with governments to begin with, through the UN country teams. But in the design of these partnerships, there needs to be, and in bringing together all these multiple stakeholders that are now increasingly part of the development landscape, philanthropies, private sector, development financing institutions, banks, and then the actors that are leading in those different thematic areas in which we work across the SDGs. There needs to be an element of co-creation, which ensures also that the different voice of the relevant actors are included. And there need to be elements, again, of policy design. We can for sure have single initiatives and projects that focus on exhibitions, on training, on creating a particular hub. But this siloed project approach is not one that leads to this element of sustainability and equity and inclusion. So in order to have that equitable, inclusive approach, there needs to be more of a deliberate design of, again, policy frameworks and initiatives that are grounded in partnerships, that are grounded in plans, that are grounded in a vision, that are consulted, that are, when we bring in the voice of civil society, of all the different actors. Again, this is a context-specific approach. This is an approach that varies, there's no specific blueprint. There is this notion of multi-stakeholder partnership that is brokered by and convened by the resident coordinators, again, our UN ambassadors at country level through the UN country teams that work jointly and try to provide this best offer to governments on these different fields, including the one of culture. And then there is another aspect, which is how culture, even if we were not talking about designing programmatic interventions that are centered on promoting collections, for instance, or that see collections as critical actors, there could be other aspects of other forms of other types of programs. So, for instance, we have several in livelihoods and craft economies, for instance, or in food heritage and sustainable agricultures. Like I'm thinking about some of our programs in the small island development states where, culture is also about preserving ancestral knowledge in agriculture to tackle climate change and resilience, or in post-conflict settings in collective memory, social reconciliation. So there could be like a variety of areas in which culture and what comes from collections also influence the design of a program. So it's a different issue than having a program that is centered, or initiatives and policies that are centered on those institutions, but leveraging the power of those actors into the design of programs that tackle other areas, from food to climate, energy, etc., which are the areas where the fund typically engages. But this element of equity and inclusion is in the principle of leave no one behind, which is exactly what informs UN development programs at country level.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you. It's very good to understand more in depth what the details are and how we can engage, which is actually a good segue for our next question, because the next question is about the future. Is a looking ahead question, right? So if we look to the future here, I would like to ask all my fellow panelists, how can we further strengthen the role and the recognition of collections and collections-based organizations in the partnership sector, in your sector, and with your experience? What would it take concretely to make this happen and make these partnerships sustainable and effective? And I would like to open the floor, see who would like to start.
I can give it a start.
Thank you, Julia.
Yeah, I would maybe like to come back to the fact that from a perspective of the sector, we have the feeling that especially on political level, it's sometimes very difficult to recognize the value of these partnerships, as some of the main outcomes of partnerships are often intangible, right? Like trust and access and shared learning. So what I would argue for is us needing to put a stronger focus on the sometimes hidden values of partnerships, if you want to call it like this, like information exchange, building trust, capacity building, the policy influence, but also community resilience at the end. And when I think about it, then I think this is the structural challenge is that a lot of partnerships, and I could have named many between museums and health organizations, between museums and tech organizations, between museums and social organizations, but most of these partnerships are funded through short-term projects. And this limits the ability to scale, to sustain, to deliver long-term impact. And I think we really need that shift from short-term project funding to long-term institutional support when it comes to partnerships and collaboration, because cross-sectoral partnerships really require time to build trust, to develop shared goals, and to return on this investment that funding organizations are often speaking about. So yes, my recommendation would be for the future to recognize funded partnerships as strategic and not as supplementary.
Thank you, Julia. So, Tim or Faxon, you have your microphone off. Go ahead.
Yes, indeed, if I may step in. From our perspective, the first point is to stress greater policy and visibility, and I think Marta has done a good job of highlighting the necessity of appropriate policy designs. From the point of view of documentary heritage collections, we think this is overlooked in national and international development frameworks, despite evident contributions to education, innovation, and resilience, and so on and so forth. So practically speaking, one could envision integrating into SDG reporting frameworks notions of how documentary heritage can catalyze debate, for example, because it is in the end information, knowledge that is encoded in documentary heritage. How can we use archives to catalyze discussion on issues of sustainable development? How can we encourage our member states to include contributions from museums, libraries, and archives within their voluntary national reviews, for example, on SDG progress? I think that would be important. But also working with regional organizations such as the African Union, the European Union, the Arab League. I think we need to strengthen this. We haven't done a good job of it as the member of the World Secretariat, and our aim is to try to strengthen these partnerships, but also to try to ensure that cultural policies explicitly link collections to education, to climate action, to social inclusion, to innovation, in a sense, positioning collections not just under culture, but across ministries of education, of environment, of tourism, of digital transformation, and so on. Another area that we think is important is to build institutional capacity through training, through resource mobilization, through technical support. I did refer to our global initiative to safeguard documentary heritage at risk. That's one such initiative. And there are several other funding streams that we have identified to support memory institutions, particularly in Africa and small island and developing states. Another issue, of course, is focusing on innovative intersectoral partnerships, and I think this has been dealt with. For example, we are working with an organization called INRIA here in France, which focuses on software heritage. To what extent can we ensure the archiving and protection of software source code as a factor of sustainable development? Because in the end, our world is built into, arises out of software source code. Even if you talk about digitalizing, documentary heritage, that in the end has its basis in software source code. So we think this is something that can be treated as documentary heritage for sustainable development, and therefore worthy of preservation, of dissemination, and even of being embedded within the larger development agenda of our member states. I think there are several other things that one can focus on, not least, if I may end on this point, supporting community-centered partnerships where local people are supported to co-curate and co-manage heritage, ensuring that sustainability efforts foster social cohesion. And we've got a project in Pakistan, Citizens Archives, that we can point to with respect to that. I think that's pretty much it.
And Paxton, I think we have a follow-up question on from the audience for you. That your examples shared collaborations north and south, but are there examples of Pan-African initiatives or collaborations between marginalized communities or collections across different contexts that you would like to highlight and share?
Well, we do have some partnerships between Portuguese-speaking countries in Africa and Latin American, Caribbean region. And the idea there is to support them to identify documentary heritage that they think they could motivate for inscription on the Memory of the World International Register. It is documentary heritage that is embedded in their histories, in their shared histories, if you will, on the basis of language, on the basis of culture, and so on and so forth. But also we are focusing on indigenous peoples and their documentary heritage, and also the indigenous languages which carry some of this heritage, and the fact that they are at risk of dying. So the idea is, how can you get oral testimonies digitized so that they are preserved, as an audiovisual record. There is that happening not only in Africa, but also in Asia, including in New Zealand and Australia with the First Nations. Those are some of the examples that I can give.
Thank you, Paxton, very much. So, team, Johanna, would you like to share some insights?
No, I just had 2 points, I think. I was thinking a little bit of what Julie had said around partnership. And I think for Pacific people, particularly Polynesian people, there's a concept called the VAR. And the VAR is the space between people, the space between places, and the spaces between things. And Tui Lava is to maintain that connection. And I think that's a really critical way to approach this, because partnership is about relationship, and relationships are really hard. I think someone was saying earlier, how do we think intergovernmentally or between nations? The reality is, and I can only speak from my country, that most of our libraries and archives are domestic-facing institutions. And so it is a real challenge to think beyond our own borders. So I would put that there. I think the other challenge, and I appreciate that this panel and this conference is a predominantly, so I understand, European, North American facing conference and event. But the reality for yourselves as institutions, if you choose to be in a relationship with Pacific peoples, is that for vast numbers of Pacific people, our land will be gone in the next 100 years. That is not a made-up reality. That is just what we are facing already. I have stood on the beaches of my father's island and known that will be gone by the time my children are old enough. So my challenge to you is, if you wish to be in a relationship and a partnership, how do you choose to be in a relationship and a partnership with a people whose culture and whose land will not exist in the next 100 years? That is a big ask. because that is not about repatriation. There is no point in repatriating items to lands which will not exist. We have to think differently about what those relationships mean, what it is to, as I said earlier, open the doors to our institutions to people who don't know you exist, who don't know that you hold things of theirs and their people. And equally, I think my second reflection is in a digital world, everything as soon as it's digitized is data and it is IP. As soon as it's digitized, it becomes consumable. We know who's coming after that. That's OpenAI, that's Meta, that's Amazon, that's Google. As soon as it's taken there, it is no longer ours. The most heartbreaking story I've heard this year is of a small group in Nepal who through COVID were doing, to save their language, were doing translation of their language and recording it down. And they were using Google Translate as their source space. So they were literally giving their language, their culture to Google and to Alphabet. As soon as we do that with our cultures, they are no longer ours. If we want to look differently at relationships, if we want to think about cultural heritage and what it means in a digital world, those are the two biggest things I would suggest we need to be paying attention to. Thank you.
Following up this question, what should we do or start doing or keep doing? What should we do?
I think one of the challenges, and I use the phrase preservation as practice. I think we often think about preservation as the end goal. In the Pacific, we talk increasingly, and it's been used a number of times in here, so it's not unique to us, but of safeguarding and the handing down of language, the handing down of ways of preparing food, the handing down of ways of telling story, and literally the passing down of stories. I always reflect on when we gather to tell stories, everyone walks away with a different version of that story, and that's what keeps it alive. Whether that's a recipe, whether that's a song, whether it's a performance, whether a dance. Preservation, I think, for most of our institutions is how we build our and build, as was mentioned earlier, our HVAC systems. We have to shift our default model of actually preserving everything to what is it to maintain and safeguard so that the knowledge is handed down. And that's often written and that's often digital and so forth. But what is it to continue to have it in multiple places, in multiple versions, told and retold, so that it endures beyond a place. In a very real terms, Papua New Guinea National Museum and Art Gallery, their HVAC system failed about 6 months ago. The vast majority of their collections are biological. That site is, and still I believe it is closed because it is no longer habitable by humans. And in that, all of their collections are gone as well. These are the realities. The other small story I have from the last 3 or 4 months was the FSM Parliament Library burning to the ground. There's only one fire engine on that island, and by the time it got there, everything was gone. That is a huge challenge when the entire cultural state, legal knowledge of that nation state is gone. How do we rebuild that? How do you start again? We have to keep looking for the ways to preserve and hand on, but also to safeguard and hand on as well.
And as you said, going beyond our institutional borders, right? Thank you for the insight. Johan, I would like to ask you, so for your insight, so how can we strengthen those collections-based organizations and the partnerships, and what we need to make this happen? And also going into more specific conservation questions from the audience, right? So what do you see? How can collections managers understand the importance of standards or necessary standards to preserve the memory?
Yeah, let me first come back to what Julia Pagel said. I think we cannot leave out the responsibility that we need an institutional funding scheme. And that is very important. And we need stable political framework conditions and policies where cultural heritage is embedded. Otherwise, we will not see any budgets allocated to this topic. And if we do not have a stable budget allocated for these tasks, I mean, we have just heard it from our colleague, Tim, it will not happen. We will not be able to have cooperation. We will not be able to look into all different details. What are the answers? Where can we find the answers? anywhere else in the world. So this is very important. And what I see now in times of climate change and unstable political conditions, that the state and the governments are withdrawing more and more from their responsibility for the protection of cultural heritage. And it is the responsibility of member states, of governments, of the states to reserve a budget for the protection of cultural heritage. And this cannot be transferred only to private initiatives. Yes, we need private initiatives, we need public-private partnerships, but we cannot let governments and states get out of their responsibility for cultural heritage. And that is true for everywhere in the world, because it's our archives, it's our collections, which also provide access to the truth. When we see what's happening now with kind of fake news, if we do not have our written documents, if we do not have our tangible heritage, which can give the access what really happened in the past and how we can study and nurture discussions, we will be completely lost. And for this, I think there are enough international meetings, G7, G20, the United Nations. I think these are the bodies and institutions where the topic needs to be discussed, and where they can make claims to encourage the countries, the states, and the governments to work together, and also to allocate funding and long-term funding, because our heritage, we see it now, what's happening in the Ukraine, in Gaza, in many other parts of the world. When there are wars, when there are conflicts, one of the first targets is also our cultural heritage, and that destroys the identity of people. And we need I think cultural heritage is a socio-cultural infrastructure that needs protection from the highest political decision-making bodies. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna. Thank you for your insight. Marta, so going back to SDG funds.
Yes, well, I could not say it better, honestly, that Johanna just did, but also Team Fax and Julia, they all made the very, very valuable point that I can just echo. I mean, as I think said, and that was probably the central point of that I was making before about partnership. It really is related to the sustainability of it. It is really related to anchoring all these beautiful ideas and initiatives around collection and their role for the SDGs, for sustainable development, for the betterment of society in general, into national policies and plans. And that's, an important role also of the UN in fostering this and in providing that support that is needed. And the funding, the resources come afterwards and should be embedded into that. And the partnerships that would bring indeed, other actors. And I've seen in these days around the ANGA, the General Assembly's high level week, there were lots of side events in which philanthropies and private sectors and so many different kinds of organizations that are beyond the sort of the key multilateral partners are actually playing a really important role in all these different areas of development. But again, I mean, at the center, the role of member states is super important in providing those framework. Now, in terms of how then we want to highlight the importance of this partnership with collections, but with anything we do at the fund and in all our work, I think is really the struggle to measure what we do, to not reduce it to indicators only, but to really have some good measures of the value of the contribution that collections make. That in this particular case, we're speaking about this type of institutions, but in general, of every kind of programmatic interventions that we design for development, of the approaches that we choose, the strategies that we embark on. It's just the challenge of proving the value of something often intangible. So we all agree here that it's an invaluable contribution, but how do we communicate it? Like what kind of like storytelling, what kind of reporting, what kind of engagements? So who are the actors that can be mobilized to do that? What are the voices that would be heard? And of course, the official reporting in the context, for instance, of SDGs, voluntary national reviews, or frameworks, again, that capture the value of culture and cultural institutions and collections into development. And I'm thinking, for instance, an example of Bilbao and how in urban sustainable development they were able to create this feedback loop with the work with the Guggenheim becoming a central to the development of Bilbao, and how they were able to again influence policies and the economics also of the cities. Of course, a country with a lot of resources, so it's very different for developing countries, but it's the concept of this feedback loop with policy, which I think is critical.
Thank you, Marta. So how do you see the future of those partnerships in general? So with the cultural heritage and the funding sector. So how do you see the future, and how do you want this partnership to be? How do you envision this partnership will be?
Well, I mean, I'm not an expert of cultural heritage institutions, so I'm not the best person on the panel to explain how this partnership, to see how this partnership should be. But as I said, we are there as the United Nations to support the government member states' vision for this, and to bring the voices of those who are least heard. So I love also the type of work that Tim was talking about. So for us to give visibility to these voices, to those who can benefit the most from the value of institutions from which they're normally excluded, or they can see the value of their heritage and cultures that need to be preserved, to be transmitted through these mechanisms. I think for us is, again, to be there to support these partnerships where there is a political will to prioritize them. And as the fund, we have again, we don't have an engagement right now. We don't have an investment area or a portfolio that is focused on that. But in this environment of very shrinking ODAs, is I don't want to create expectations that we're about to create one. But wherever there is a strong political will to make this central to the development plans, I believe our teams on the ground, through our colleagues from UN agencies and others through our RC system, will be there to support. And this would in turn create synergies with other partners such as the EU and other that have the resources as well to invest into this.
Thank you, Marta. And it appears you have an invitation. And in fact, there's an invitation to you and other organizations to collaborate with the UN, eGov, to conduct research and think about measuring the value and impact of initiatives and efforts around collections and heritage, more broadly speaking. So, and my question also goes to the other members of the panel. How do you envision this partnership in the future? So within collections-based organizations, the fundings, the initiatives that you lead. So how do you see this in the future? Open to all.
I think there's one, I'm reflecting a little bit on the project which I led, Digital Pacific, and it sort of was actually funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade as a development project and has been done so for 5 years. One of the challenges is they have is obviously as an agency like that, and with the purpose for that being engagement in the Pacific, which is very much a part of the Australian government strategy, political strategy. Development can't go on forever. And I think there's a really interesting challenge in terms of being in relationships. And I think Julia mentioned it earlier, we often get projects that are short term and we get them well funded and they look great, and we do a website and we do a nice shiny brochure, and then we all walk on to the next project. And I'm really fascinated in the idea of, again, like I said earlier, what is it to continue to be in a relationship that maybe isn't always exciting and we've got a big new thing, a shiny thing to point at, but what is it to be engaged and stay connected, even out of a conference like this? What is it to stay connected with individuals who have agency and control in different ways, and then you can always look back to them. And again, as I said earlier, my challenge for a major institution to say we're going to be in a relationship with the people of these places because we have their holdings, and we are going to do that as our core mission for perpetuity, that's a really powerful ongoing thing. And that doesn't require capex or opex, but it requires you to be willing to be present and to be heard and to take a call or to send an email or to share a drink or a break bread with someone when you meet them. And I think that's a really human thing. I think, just watching your presentation about the Apoyo stuff, all of those interactions and all of those locations felt really powerful and wonderful for there. And I think to Marta's point around storytelling, I think we have the opportunity to reduce, to not be seduced by having one story that solves everything. There are many stories in many places, in multiple contexts and in multiple ways that are often small. We don't always have to track them and measure them, which we often do in research because you have to, justify that you've done the thing. But we have to be open to hearing them, to seeing them, and to paying attention to them, and then passing them on in our own ways. And again, to my point earlier, it's the passing on of the good things and the making sure we maybe don't pass on so many of the bad things that have got us to where we are. I think that's the really wonderful opportunity for us in partnership.
Thank you for this insight, Tim. Julia or Faxen, would you like to make some last contributions before we start to wrap up?
Well, not really. I think I agree with everything that Tim has said. But I mean, we live in an interesting time. We've got reduced funding overall. We've got a questioning of the whole bedrock of multilateralism. We've got member states pulling back, questioning institutions like ours more critically than they've ever done. And I think that, in a sense, is going to force us into building more innovative partnerships. They don't necessarily have to be huge, mega partnerships, but ones that address the needs of the people on the ground. I think if there is evidence to be produced as to what we are doing meaningfully on the ground, we will be aiming for that. And in a sense, if you will, the blessing, the silver lining out of all this murkiness is that we will be compelled to look anew at what we do and embrace communities much more, stakeholders at the grassroots level, and deal with them in a more meaningful fashion, particularly for institutions that deal in cultural heritage such as ours. So, I think that's where we're going if we had to come up with one or two scenarios for the future.
Thank you, Faxen. Julia, you were going to say?
Yeah, just to be honest, I think everything smart has been said at that point, but maybe just to share one personal story. When I joined NEMO, I had a conversation with the founder of NEMO, who at that point was quite old then, and he was telling me, and I was quite young, and he was telling me, you know what? It's all about people in this network. And I didn't understand what he meant, because we are a network of organizations, of museums or museum organizations. And over the years, I've been with NEMO for quite some time now, so I should know. I realized he was absolutely right. It's all about people. It's all about fostering those relationships and understanding the people and listening to them and keeping in mind what they've said, and things will emerge. I think the notion of emergence, which for networks like NEMO has really helped us so much in understanding where museums go, what their topics are, what their fears are, what the challenges are, also what their opportunities are. So that's maybe a very personal thing, but I think in the end we all come back to this understanding that it's all about people and all about listening to them.
Thank you, Julia. And what a marvelous conversation. And I always say people is patrimony. We are the patrimony, right? So it is about people. And it has been a wonderful conversation. And thank you so much. I think we could stay here for a very long time and we've not even finished what we want to discuss. I also want to thank the questions. The questions will be noted, even though we did not have time to answer all of them. And first and foremost, thank our panelists for your thoughtful insights and also practical examples for sustainable partnerships. I believe this conversation has been very inspiring and has demonstrated how strategic partnerships can advance sustainable development while also elevating the role of collections and collections-based organizations across sectors, and how we all, right, play a vital role in shaping a more sustainable future and the great potential ahead of us when we work together. And then the people, it's about the people, for the people. So let's stay connected. I thank again all the panelists for your time, for your thoughts, for your experience, and I'm sending back to José Luis. Thank you all.
Thank you, Beatriz. I'd like to join you in thanking our panelists for the insightful inputs, and a big thanks to our moderator, so to you, Beatriz, for conducting and focusing the conversation. I agree, all the perspectives shared today, the reminders of the potential of partnerships to enhance the role of collections-based organizations for sustainable development, especially when we work together, we work with the people, reimagine the roles and the actions that heritage organizations can take up towards a better future for everyone. Many thanks for all the valuable points and insights shared here today. And so as we reach the final day of this 5-day virtual conference, so I'd like again to take a moment to extend this thanks to all of you. So all of our speakers, all of our partners, the digital volunteers from around the world that were vital to make this happen, and especially you, our global audience, for your commitment, curiosity, and collaboration. So we are not over yet. We still have the breakout sessions, but we hope the presentations and the panel sessions have been fruitful, have inspired concrete action, and hopefully also new partnerships across sectors. So all the insights and inputs shared throughout the conference, they have been carefully captured and will continue to do so in the breakout session, and they will be informing the recommendations from this conference that we'll share with everyone shortly, also on the conference website. So if you could just take a short time for a quick survey that we'll share in the chat now to get your impressions about the conference and keywords, key takeaways. We would really appreciate that. We also encourage everyone to continue checking the conference website, where we're going to be posting the outputs of the conference, but also the partner matching page, where we invite you to share ideas and projects to connect across sectors around heritage collections. And for those who continue with us in the breakout rooms today, so we'll take a short break, a 10-minute break, and we'll reconvene there through the dedicated Zoom link. So looking forward to seeing you there soon. And a big thanks, everyone. I think it's been a very rich journey and inspiring to me, at least, so many takeaways here. And we'll try also to compile and put it together and share the messages, the key messages with everyone. Thank you so much. Take care.